So this old hat is all you've got? This old hat? Look at you. Look at you. A washed-up truck driver. Look at him. He's crying over an old hat. Maybe that's the only thing he's ever accomplished. I told you, walk away. Boss, I don't think he's just a truck driver. Who are you? I used to wear a different uniform. I spent 22 years protecting.
Move that oversized truck before we move it for you, old man. The shout cracked through the humid Louisiana night like a tire exploding on hot asphalt. The lonely truck stop fell silent. Even the humming fuel pumps seemed to hesitate. Marcus Coleman sat motionless behind the steering wheel of his 18-wheeler, one weathered hand resting on the ignition key, the other wrapped around a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. The dashboard cast a faint green glow across his broad face, revealing deep lines carved by decades of long highways, sleepless nights, and burdens he had never spoken aloud. Outside, 10 motorcycles rolled into the parking lot in perfect formation. Chrome gleamed beneath the flickering station lights. Engines rumbled like distant thunder before falling quiet one after another. Leather boots struck the pavement. Heavy, deliberate, predatory. Employees inside the convenience store stopped stocking shelves. A young cashier slowly lowered the coffee pot she had been cleaning. An elderly couple fueling their RV exchanged nervous glances before quietly locking their doors. Everyone recognized the patch stitched across the bikers' backs. Iron Wolves. The gang had become infamous across 3 southern states. They extorted truckers. They robbed lonely travelers. Sometimes they simply looked for someone too weak or too frightened to fight back. Tonight, they had found a target that looked almost laughably easy. The biggest man among them wasn't one of the bikers. It was the truck driver. Marcus climbed slowly down from the cab. At 52 years old, he moved without hurry. His heavy frame settled onto the pavement with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent more than half his life balancing on steel steps exactly like these. His faded denim shirt stretched across broad shoulders softened by age. A gray beard framed his calm expression. His belly pushed slightly against his worn work belt. To anyone watching, he looked exactly like what the gang expected, an overweight black truck driver nearing retirement. Someone who had seen better days. Someone who would rather apologize than argue. Tyler Briggs, leader of the Iron Wolves, smirked as he approached. He couldn't have been older than 30. Muscular. Tattooed. Full of the reckless certainty that only came from years without consequences. He stopped inches from Marcus and looked him up and down. Damn, Tyler laughed loudly enough for the others to hear. I've seen freight trailers carrying less weight than you. The gang burst into laughter. One biker slapped another on the shoulder. Another pointed toward Marcus's stomach. Someone barked, maybe that's why the truck's suspension is crying. More laughter. Marcus didn't answer. His eyes remained steady. Not angry. Not afraid. Simply watching. That silence irritated Tyler more than any insult could have. He stepped closer until their boots nearly touched. You deaf? Still nothing. Marcus slowly took another sip of coffee. The paper cup trembled only because of the warm breeze. Not because of fear. Behind the gas station windows, the cashier whispered, "Please, just leave." She had seen enough security footage over the years to know exactly how nights like this usually ended. Truckers beaten. Wallets stolen. Police arriving too late. Tyler reached forward without warning and slapped the coffee from Marcus's hand. The cup burst across the concrete. Dark liquid splashed over Marcus's boots. The parking lot became unnervingly quiet. Several gang members grinned. They expected shouting. Maybe begging. At the very least, a reaction. Instead, Marcus looked down at the spreading puddle. Then calmly lifted his eyes back toward Tyler. I paid $2 for that coffee, he said softly. His deep voice carried no anger. Only disappointment. Tyler blinked. Then laughed even harder. You worried about $2? Marcus nodded once. It wasn't the money. What then? Marcus glanced toward the convenience store. The young woman inside looked exhausted. Tyler frowned. She brewed that coffee less than 5 minutes ago. Marcus continued quietly. She probably started work before sunrise yesterday. She didn't deserve having her effort wasted. For one brief second, nobody spoke. Even a few bikers exchanged uncertain looks. Tyler quickly recovered, forcing another laugh. "You hear this guy? He thinks we're discussing coffee." He shoved Marcus hard in the chest. The massive truck driver took one small step backward. Nothing more. No clenched fists. No threats. No attempt to fight. Only patience. To Tyler, patience looked exactly like weakness. He climbed onto the truck's metal step and pounded his fist against the driver's door. "You know what? We're taking your rig." He leaned closer, smiling with cruel satisfaction. "And if you don't like it..." His hand disappeared beneath his leather vest. When it emerged, moonlight flashed across the polished edge of a hunting knife. Several bystanders gasped. Marcus's expression remained unchanged. His eyes drifted briefly, not to the blade, but to the faded navy blue baseball cap resting on the driver's seat inside the cab. The old embroidered emblem on its front had almost disappeared beneath years of sun and rain. Almost. Tyler never noticed it. Neither did anyone else. Not yet. Marcus Coleman had learned long ago that the loudest people in the room usually knew the least about the person standing quietly before them. As Tyler's gang laughed around him, Marcus simply bent down and picked up the crushed paper cup lying near his boots. A thin stream of coffee dripped onto the concrete before disappearing into the cracks beneath the fuel island. He dropped the ruined cup into a nearby trash bin. No dramatic sigh. No angry glare. No complaint. Just a small act of respect for a place that wasn't even his. The gesture went unnoticed by the Iron Wolves. But it didn't escape the eyes of the young cashier watching through the convenience store window. Her name was Emily Foster, 23 years old, working double shifts to help pay for her mother's cancer treatments. She had watched hundreds of truck drivers pass through this lonely station over the years. Some were impatient. Some were rude. Some left garbage scattered across the parking lot without a second thought. Marcus never did. Every Tuesday evening, almost like clockwork, his blue and white Freightliner rolled beneath pump number 4. He always smiled before walking inside. Always greeted everyone by name. Always asked Emily how her mother was doing. Always left an extra $5 in the charity jar beside the register, pretending it was loose change he didn't need. When Christmas came, he quietly paid for coffee and sandwiches for 2 stranded truckers whose fuel cards had been declined. When an elderly couple blew a tire outside the station one freezing winter morning, Marcus spent nearly an hour changing it himself before continuing his delivery. He never posted about it. Never mentioned it again. Kindness, in Marcus's world, wasn't something you announced. It was something you practiced. Night after night. Mile after mile. The enormous truck parked behind him carried refrigerated medical supplies bound for a children's hospital in Houston. Insulin. Blood plasma. Temperature-sensitive medications. Cargo worth millions. But to Marcus, the shipment wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in heartbeats. Every hour mattered. Every delay could become someone else's tragedy. That responsibility weighed far more heavily than the trailer itself. Inside the sleeper cab, tucked carefully behind the passenger seat, rested a small wooden picture frame wrapped in a faded blue cloth. The photograph showed Marcus standing beside a smiling woman wearing a yellow summer dress. His wife, Angela. She had loved road trips. She used to ride beside him whenever his routes stayed within a few states. They laughed over truck stop diners, collected postcards, argued over country music stations before laughing again 10 minutes later. Cancer stole those trips. Then it stole Angela. 3 years had passed since the funeral, yet Marcus still spoke to her picture every morning before starting the engine. "Another safe trip, baby," he whispered. "I'll be home soon." Beneath the photograph rested another picture. His granddaughter. 6-year-old Ava. Gap-toothed smile. Curly hair tied into 2 tiny puffs. Every drawing she made somehow included Grandpa's truck. She believed he delivered happiness instead of freight. Marcus never corrected her. Perhaps in his own quiet way. He did. Back outside, Tyler circled him like a wolf testing injured prey. "You really don't scare easy, do you?" Marcus answered honestly. "I've learned that anger usually makes things worse." One biker snorted. "Hear that? The old man wants to teach philosophy." Another shoved Marcus's shoulder. You some kind of preacher? Marcus smiled faintly. No. What are you then? I'm a truck driver. The answer sounded almost disappointing. Exactly as Marcus intended. Tyler shook his head. I don't buy it. He studied Marcus's thick forearms. The faded scars crossing his knuckles. The strangely upright posture that didn't match a man carrying extra weight. Something felt different. Hidden. But Tyler's pride drowned out instinct. You know what I think? Marcus remained silent. I think you've spent your whole life letting people push you around. Several gang members nodded. That's why you're still standing there. Marcus looked toward the dark highway stretching beyond the station. Long ribbons of asphalt disappeared into the Louisiana night. He had driven roads like these for decades. He had watched storms swallow entire counties, seen strangers rescue strangers after hurricanes, held the hand of a dying accident victim until paramedics arrived. Life had taught him one lesson over and over again. Real strength wasn't measured by how many people feared you. It was measured by how many people felt safe because you were there. He looked back at Tyler. I hope your parents are still alive. The unexpected words caught everyone off guard. Tyler frowned. What? I hope you still have the chance to make them proud. The laughter stopped. Confusion spread across several faces. What the hell does that even mean? Marcus's voice remained calm. Nothing you do tonight has to decide who you become tomorrow. For a heartbeat, even the wind seemed to disappear. Emily pressed her hand against the glass inside the store. The elderly couple remained frozen inside their RV. One younger biker quietly lowered his eyes. But Tyler's face darkened. He wasn't hearing compassion. He was hearing disrespect. His jaw tightened. Without warning, he reached into the open truck cab, grabbed the old navy blue baseball cap from the driver's seat, and held it high above his head. So this ugly thing means something to you? Marcus's peaceful expression changed for the first time that night. Not to anger. To concern. Please, he said quietly. Give it back. Tyler smiled. Then, with every member of the gang watching, he turned the cap over in his hands, studying the faded embroidered insignia stitched across its front. His grin slowly widened. Oh, what do we have here? Tyler turned the faded navy blue cap over in his hands, brushing his thumb across the worn embroidery. The stitching had nearly disappeared after years beneath scorching sun, freezing rain, and thousands of miles behind a windshield. Still, one symbol remained unmistakable. A golden eagle. An anchor. A trident. What is this supposed to be? Tyler sneered. You buy military stuff at a flea market? The Iron Wolves laughed again. One biker grabbed the cap for a closer look. Looks ancient. Probably some Halloween costume. Another tossed it into the air before catching it with one hand. Marcus didn't move. His eyes followed the cap. Nothing else. Please, he repeated quietly. Don't throw it. Tyler smirked. Why? It belonged to someone important. The answer made several bikers laugh even harder. What? Your grandpa. Marcus nodded slowly. In a way, no one understood what he meant. Not yet. Several miles away, thunder rolled somewhere beyond the pine forests lining Interstate 10. Warm southern wind carried the smell of rain toward the truck stop. The station lights flickered briefly before stabilizing again. Everything around them seemed suspended. Waiting. Marcus glanced toward his truck. Toward the refrigerated trailer. He knew every passing minute mattered. The temperature-controlled unit continued humming steadily behind him, preserving medications destined for children who had never heard his name. He had promised the hospital administrator he would arrive before dawn. Marcus never broke promises. Not if he could help it. His phone vibrated inside his shirt pocket. He ignored it. A second vibration came only moments later. Then a third. Emily noticed. So, someone's probably waiting for him, she whispered to herself. Marcus already knew who it was. Dispatch. The hospital. Maybe both. But there was no reaching the highway while 10 armed bikers stood between him and his truck. He exhaled slowly. Patience. Always patience. It was a habit born decades earlier. Long before 18-wheelers. Long before highways. long before grief had turned silence into his closest companion. 30 years ago, Marcus Coleman wasn't driving freight across America. He was running across burning sand beneath a merciless Middle Eastern sun. Every morning began before daylight. Every mistake carried consequences. Every decision could mean life or death. The instructors had shouted until their voices disappeared. Bodies failed. Bones broke. Men quit. Marcus didn't. Not because he believed he was stronger. Because someone had once taught him something his father repeated every Sunday afternoon while repairing old fishing nets outside their small Louisiana home. Son, character is what stays when strength leaves. Marcus carried those words into every impossible training exercise. Every freezing ocean swim. Every sleepless patrol. Every mission whose details remained buried beneath classified documents. His teammates came from every corner of America. Different races. Different accents. Different beliefs. Out there, none of those things mattered. Only one question ever mattered. Can I trust you with my life? Marcus answered that question again. And again. And again. Not through speeches. Through actions. There were medals. Commendations. Handshakes from men whose names appeared on television. He accepted every award with the same quiet nod before returning to work. Because medals collected dust. People did not. When his military career finally ended, reporters asked whether he planned to write a book. Marcus politely declined. Television producers wanted interviews. He declined. Companies offered six-figure security jobs. He declined those too. Instead, he bought a truck. People thought he was crazy. You spent 20 years serving your country just to haul freight. Marcus always smiled. Somebody has to. To him, there was dignity in delivering food, medicine, building supplies, Christmas toys, everything America quietly depended on. The road didn't care who had once worn a uniform. It simply demanded honesty. Show up, drive safely, deliver on time, repeat. Marcus loved that simplicity. It reminded him that purpose didn't disappear when applause stopped. Back at the truck stop, Tyler twirled the old cap around one finger. So tell me, fat man, were you actually in the military? Or do you just enjoy pretending? Marcus met his eyes. I served. When? A long time ago. What branch? Marcus hesitated. Not because it was a secret. Because it had never felt important. The Navy. The gang exchanged amused looks. One biker burst out laughing. You? In the Navy? What were you? The cook. Another shouted. Maybe he drove boats instead of trucks. The parking lot exploded with laughter once more. Marcus simply answered no. Tyler stepped closer. So, what exactly did you do? Marcus looked at the old cap still hanging from Tyler's fingers. His voice remained gentle. I worked with good men. Most of them never came home. For the briefest moment, silence settled over the group. Even Tyler's grin faded slightly. There was something about the way Marcus said those words. No pride. No performance. Only quiet remembrance. Then Tyler shook the feeling away. Touching story. He looked toward his gang. Too bad nobody's buying it. Without warning, he wound his arm back. The old Navy cap sailed through the air. It landed several yards away, sliding beneath the rear wheels of one of the motorcycles. Marcus's eyes followed it. The smile disappeared from his face, not replaced by rage. Something deeper. Something older. He slowly turned back toward Tyler. For the first time that night, the former Navy SEAL stood just a little straighter. And although no one there understood why, every instinct inside the youngest biker suddenly screamed that something had just changed. The old Navy cap lay beneath the rear tire of a black Harley-Davidson, its faded brim pressed against the oil-stained pavement. For several long seconds, Marcus Coleman simply stared at it. The warm Louisiana wind whispered across the truck stop, carrying the scent of diesel fuel, wet asphalt, and the distant promise of rain. No one spoke. The laughter that had echoed only moments earlier faded into an uneasy silence. Something about Marcus had changed. Not his posture. Not his expression. Something deeper. His eyes. They no longer looked tired. They looked focused. Tyler noticed it too, though he couldn't explain why. He folded his arms and smirked. What? You finally getting mad? Marcus slowly lifted his gaze from the crushed cap. No. His voice remained steady. I'm just deciding how much this night is going to cost. The sentence puzzled the gang. Several bikers exchanged confused looks before bursting into laughter again. Tyler shook his head. There it is. The old man thinks he's scary. Marcus ignored the mockery. Instead, he looked toward the refrigerated trailer attached to his truck. Its cooling unit hummed steadily, a soft mechanical rhythm cutting through the tense silence. He checked his watch. 3:21 in the morning. Every passing minute mattered. Inside that trailer were medications meant for children whose lives depended on arriving before sunrise. He had already lost nearly 20 minutes. Marcus sighed quietly. I don't want any trouble. Tyler laughed. That's obvious. I'm asking one last time. Marcus pointed calmly toward the motorcycle. Please move your bike. And please give me my cap. Tyler walked over to the Harley. Instead of moving it, he deliberately rocked the heavy motorcycle backward. The thick rear tire rolled directly over the faded cap. Rubber scraped against fabric. A dull crunch echoed across the pavement. Several bikers howled with laughter. There. It's flatter now. Marcus watched without blinking. Emily gasped inside the convenience store. Oh no. The elderly man inside the RV whispered to his wife. That cap meant something. His wife nodded silently. Across the parking lot, one of the younger bikers shifted uncomfortably. His name was Luke. Only 22. Newest member of the Iron Wolves. He hadn't joined to terrorize strangers. He had joined because belonging somewhere felt easier than being alone. Watching Tyler destroy the old man's belongings no longer felt entertaining. It felt wrong. He quietly stepped closer. Tyler, maybe we've made our point. Tyler turned sharply. You got something to say? Luke hesitated. No. Then shut up. The younger biker lowered his eyes. Marcus noticed. He recognized that look. Not fear. Doubt. Years earlier, he had seen the same expression on frightened young sailors standing on the edge of decisions that would shape the rest of their lives. People weren't born cruel. Most simply followed the loudest voice in the room. Marcus looked directly at Luke. You don't have to do this. Tyler spun around. What did you say to him? I wasn't talking to you. Tyler's jaw tightened. You think you're some kind of hero? No. Marcus answered honestly. I think everyone deserves one chance to walk away. The words lingered in the humid air. Tyler barked a harsh laugh. You hear that? He's giving us a chance. The gang erupted again. One biker pulled out his phone. This is going online. Another shouted, record this. Let's see the fat trucker save the day. Within seconds, 3 different phones were pointed toward Marcus. Red recording lights blinked. Thousands of future viewers. Millions, perhaps. Everyone expected entertainment. Nobody expected history. Tyler cracked his knuckles. So here's what's going to happen. He pointed toward the trailer. We're taking whatever you've got back there. Marcus shook his head once. No. You don't get a vote. It isn't mine. Tyler frowned. What? The cargo belongs to a children's hospital. So? There are children waiting. Tyler shrugged. Not my problem. Marcus's eyes never left his. I know. But it should be. The sentence landed harder than anyone expected. For a brief second, Tyler's confidence wavered. Only for a heartbeat. Then pride returned. He stepped closer until their faces were inches apart. You know what your problem is? Marcus remained silent. You still think people care about doing the right thing? Marcus smiled sadly. I know they do. Tyler shoved him hard. This time Marcus didn't step backward. He remained exactly where he stood. It felt as though Tyler had pushed against a concrete bridge pillar. Confusion flashed across Tyler's face. He shoved again. Nothing. Marcus's boots never moved. Not an inch. The laughter around them stopped. Several gang members frowned. Tyler's expression hardened. He drew the hunting knife again, the polished blade reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights overhead. Emily screamed from inside the store. Someone call the police. Her trembling hands reached for the emergency phone beneath the counter. The elderly couple locked themselves deeper inside their RV. Luke instinctively stepped backward. Every instinct told him the night had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Marcus looked at the knife, then back into Tyler's eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost gentle. I've spent my entire life trying to avoid hurting people. A light breeze stirred across the parking lot. Rain began falling in slow, scattered drops. One, then another. Tiny circles formed in the puddles around their boots. Marcus slowly removed his truck keys from his pocket and placed them carefully on the hood of the Freightliner. Then he rolled up the sleeves of his faded denim shirt with calm, deliberate movements. Not because he was preparing for a fight, because he knew there was no longer any way to avoid one. The former Navy SEAL took one slow breath. His eyes softened with quiet regret. And, somewhere deep inside, the man he had spent 20 years keeping under control finally opened his eyes. Rain began as a whisper. Tiny drops struck the polished fuel pumps, the chrome motorcycles, and the broad hood of Marcus Coleman's Freightliner, turning the truck stop into a mirror of broken reflections. No one moved. Tyler's hunting knife remained suspended between them, its polished blade glistening beneath the fluorescent lights. Marcus stood perfectly still. His sleeves were rolled neatly to his forearms. His hands hung relaxed at his sides. There was no fighting stance, no raised fists, no threatening posture, only a calm that somehow felt heavier than violence itself. The younger biker, Luke, swallowed hard. Something deep inside him screamed that they should leave. Now, before something irreversible happened. Tyler, he said quietly. Let's go. The gang leader didn't even look back. You scared? Luke hesitated. No. Then stay out of this. Tyler stepped forward and pressed the knife lightly against Marcus's chest. The blade wrinkled the faded denim shirt. I've met guys like you. He smirked. Big. Quiet. They always fold. Marcus looked down at the knife, then back into Tyler's eyes. You don't want to do this. Tyler laughed. I already am. Without warning, he shoved Marcus with his free hand. Hard. The former truck driver barely shifted his weight. It felt like trying to move a bridge support. Tyler frowned. He pushed again. Nothing. Marcus remained rooted to the pavement. Rainwater rolled from the brim of his gray hair onto his shoulders. His breathing never changed. The gang exchanged uncertain glances. One biker muttered, "How's he not moving?" Tyler's pride flared. He lunged. The knife shot forward. It wasn't a full stab. More of a reckless thrust meant to scare. Marcus moved. For the first time that night. To Emily inside the convenience store. He almost disappeared. One moment he stood directly in front of Tyler. The next, he wasn't there. The blade sliced through empty air. Tyler stumbled forward, caught off balance. Before he could recover, Marcus gently caught his wrist. Not violently. Firmly. His other hand settled against Tyler's elbow. A tiny movement followed. Barely noticeable. A twist. A shift of balance. Gravity did the rest. Tyler hit the wet pavement with a heavy splash. The knife skidded several feet away. Silence. Absolute silence. Every biker stared. Emily blinked. She hadn't even seen what happened. Neither had the elderly couple watching through the RV windshield. Tyler groaned, stunned more by confusion than pain. What? The sentence never finished. Marcus stepped backward instead of forward. He didn't capitalize on the opening. He didn't strike. Instead, he calmly kicked the knife farther away. I don't want to hurt you. His voice remained low, almost compassionate. Tyler's face burned with humiliation. In front of his gang. In front of strangers. In front of phones recording everything. He scrambled to his feet. Get him. 5 bikers rushed Marcus simultaneously. Years earlier, that command would have been followed by gunfire. Explosions. Chaos. Tonight, it was answered with discipline. The first attacker swung a chain. Marcus stepped inside the arc before it gathered momentum. His forearm redirected the swing. His shoulder bumped the man's chest. The biker lost his footing and crashed harmlessly against a fuel barrier. The second charged from Marcus's left. A heavy punch. Marcus slipped past it. One open palm struck the attacker's shoulder. Another gentle push redirected his momentum. He stumbled directly into his own teammate. Both collapsed together. The third reached for Marcus from behind. Marcus pivoted, locked the man's arm, turned once. The biker landed flat on his back, coughing as air rushed from his lungs. No broken bones. No unnecessary force. Just precision. Luke stood frozen. He had never seen anything like it. Marcus wasn't fighting with anger. He wasn't even fighting to win. He was simply ending every attack as efficiently as possible. Like someone following a procedure he had practiced thousands of times. Another biker pulled a metal pipe from his saddlebag. Marcus sighed softly. You really don't have to keep doing this. The pipe came crashing downward. Marcus caught the attacker's wrist. Rotated it. The pipe clanged harmlessly onto the concrete. A quick sweep of Marcus's foot sent the man spinning onto the rain-soaked pavement beside Tyler. Within less than 30 seconds, 6 members of the Iron Wolves lay scattered across the truck stop. Groaning. Breathing. Alive. None seriously injured. The remaining bikers stopped advancing. Fear replaced arrogance. Their eyes started between Marcus and their fallen friends. The rain grew heavier. Water streamed down Marcus's face. He wasn't even breathing hard. Emily slowly stepped outside beneath the station awning. Her phone trembled in her hand. The emergency operator was still connected. She whispered. I don't think the truck driver needs help. Tyler stared at Marcus as though seeing him for the first time. His chest rose rapidly. His confidence had vanished. Who? His voice cracked. Who the hell are you? Marcus looked around at the injured men. He knelt beside one biker, holding his shoulder. Don't try to stand yet. The young man nodded instinctively. Marcus checked his breathing. Made sure his arm wasn't dislocated. Only then did he rise again. He faced Tyler. His expression carried no pride. No satisfaction. Only quiet sadness. I told you, Marcus said. I'm just a truck driver. In the distance, the wail of approaching police sirens pierced the rain-filled darkness. Closer. Closer. Then flashing blue and red lights appeared on the empty highway, racing toward the truck stop. Marcus closed his eyes for a brief moment. Not in relief. In regret. Because he had spent his entire adult life avoiding exactly what had just happened. And despite winning every second of the fight, he still felt as though everyone standing in that parking lot had lost something far more valuable than pride. The rain washed away the last echoes of violence. One by one, the motorcycles stood abandoned beneath the gray Louisiana sky, their chrome surfaces glistening beneath the flashing red and blue lights of arriving police cruisers. No one cheered. No one applauded. The only sounds were the hiss of falling rain, the distant hum of Marcus Coleman's refrigerated trailer, and the uneven breathing of the men scattered across the wet pavement. Marcus stood quietly in the middle of it all. His faded denim shirt clung to his broad shoulders, soaked through by the rain. Water dripped from his gray beard. His sleeves were still rolled to his elbows. If someone had arrived only now, they never would have guessed that the large black truck driver standing calmly beside his 18-wheeler had just disarmed and subdued 6 armed men in less than a minute. He didn't look victorious. He looked tired. The first patrol car slid to a stop beside the fuel pumps. Its doors flew open. 3 deputies stepped out with weapons drawn. Everybody stay where you are. The command echoed across the truck stop. No one resisted. Tyler Briggs slowly raised both hands, his face pale beneath the rain. His hunting knife still lay several yards away where Marcus had kicked it moments earlier. Luke immediately dropped to his knees. So did I, another biker shouted. We're done. The deputies moved carefully through the parking lot, securing weapons, separating the injured, and checking for anyone in immediate danger. One deputy approached Marcus cautiously. He stopped several feet away. You the driver? Marcus nodded. Yes, sir. You injured? Marcus glanced down at himself. A torn sleeve. A small cut across one knuckle. Nothing more. I'll be fine. The deputy studied him for a long second, then looked at the 6 injured bikers surrounding him. None unconscious. None bleeding heavily. None appeared to have broken bones. The deputy frowned. You did all this? Marcus answered with the same calm honesty he had shown all night. They attacked me. Another deputy recovered the hunting knife. A third began speaking with Emily inside the convenience store while reviewing security camera footage. Within minutes, more patrol vehicles arrived. The truck stop became a sea of flashing emergency lights. Paramedics moved quickly among the fallen bikers. Marcus quietly helped one EMT stabilize a young man's shoulder before stepping aside without being asked. He never once mentioned what he had done. He never pointed toward the gang. He never tried to justify himself. He simply waited, as though none of this belonged to him. Emily finally walked outside beneath a large umbrella. Her hands were still trembling. She stopped in front of Marcus. Her voice cracked. You saved all of us. Marcus offered a gentle smile. I don't think so. She looked confused. If you hadn't stopped them. Marcus slowly shook his head. I only stopped them from hurting someone. He looked toward the ambulance where paramedics were examining Tyler. I couldn't stop them from becoming this. Emily followed his gaze. For the first time, she realized Marcus wasn't looking at the bikers with hatred. He was looking at them with sorrow, as if he mourned the choices that had brought them here. That realization struck her harder than the fight itself. Nearby, one of the paramedics looked up in disbelief. These injuries. Another EMT frowned. What about them? They're controlled. He examined Tyler's shoulder again. Whoever defended himself knew exactly where to strike. No shattered joints. No damaged spine. No crushed ribs. He looked around the parking lot. This wasn't someone fighting in anger. This was someone choosing how much force not to use. The words drifted across the rain-soaked parking lot. Several deputies quietly turned toward Marcus. One older officer narrowed his eyes. There was something strangely familiar about the truck driver's posture. The way he stood. The way he watched every movement without appearing tense. Like someone whose instincts had been forged long before tonight. The officer slowly walked toward him. Sir. Marcus turned politely. Yes. Have we met before? Marcus searched the man's face. Gray hair beneath a soaked patrol hat. Weathered features. Kind eyes. Something stirred in his memory. I'm not sure. The officer studied him. Another moment. Then his eyes drifted toward the faded baseball cap resting on the hood of the truck. One of the deputies had retrieved it from beneath the motorcycle and carefully brushed away the dirt. The old embroidered trident was now visible beneath the rainwater. The officer froze. His expression changed instantly. He stepped closer. Closer still. Almost unconsciously, he removed his patrol cap. You've got to be kidding. He looked back at Marcus. His voice became almost a whisper. Chief. Marcus sighed quietly. It's been a long time. The officer's eyes widened. His breathing caught. Around them, the other deputies exchanged puzzled looks. No one understood why one of the most respected officers in the county had suddenly gone silent. The veteran officer slowly straightened his posture. Then, without hesitation, he raised his hand in a crisp military salute. Every conversation at the truck stop stopped. Every deputy turned. Every biker stared. Even Tyler forgot the pain in his shoulder. The rain continued falling in complete silence. If this moment touched your heart, let us know where you're watching from, and remember this. True strength is never measured by how hard someone can hit. It's measured by how much power they choose to hold back. Marcus quietly returned the salute. Neither man smiled. Neither needed to. Because everyone standing beneath those flashing lights had just realized the quiet truck driver was never an ordinary truck driver at all. The salute hung in the rain like a moment frozen outside of time. No one moved. Not the deputies. Not the paramedics. Not even the members of the Iron Wolves lying across the soaked pavement. Only the rhythmic tapping of rain against steel roofs broke the silence. Marcus Coleman lowered his hand first. His expression remained unchanged. Almost embarrassed. You don't have to do that anymore, deputy. The older officer shook his head. Yes, sir. I do. He swallowed hard before continuing. My name is Daniel Brooks. Marcus studied him for a moment. The years had changed the man's face. More wrinkles. Gray hair. A heavier frame. Then something clicked. Corpsman Brooks. The deputy smiled for the first time. I wondered if you'd remember. Marcus let out a quiet breath. I remember every man I served beside. Brooks laughed softly, though his eyes had already begun to glisten. You pulled me out of the Gulf. You carried me almost half a mile after our convoy got hit. Marcus shook his head. We all carried each other. No. Brooks answered firmly. You carried me. Around them, confusion spread. One young deputy whispered, What are they talking about? Brooks never took his eyes off Marcus. 26 years ago. I was 22. I thought I was invincible. His voice drifted across the truck stop as everyone listened. Our convoy was ambushed. The explosion threw me into the water. My left leg was shattered. I couldn't swim. I remember going under. He paused. I remember thinking, this is how I die. Rain rolled down his face, mixing with tears he no longer tried to hide. Then someone grabbed my vest. He looked directly at Marcus. It was him. He kept pulling me toward shore while people were still shooting. He could have left me. He would have made it out faster. But he didn't. Another long silence settled over the parking lot. Even Tyler had forgotten his shoulder. Forgotten the handcuffs now resting around his wrists. Brooks continued. When we finally reached cover, the medic told Marcus his own shoulder had been hit. Marcus smiled faintly. It wasn't that bad. Brooks almost laughed. The bullet passed clean through. You lost enough blood to collapse. You just never mentioned it. Several deputies stared at Marcus with growing disbelief. One asked quietly, why wasn't any of this in the report? Brooks looked toward him. Because Chief Coleman refused to let them write it that way. He said nobody saves anyone alone. He ordered every rescue credit divided among the whole team. Marcus lowered his eyes. It was true. No, Brooks replied. It was humble. The deputy reached into his patrol vehicle. A moment later, he returned carrying a rugged laptop used for law enforcement records. He opened a secure database, typed quickly, then turned the screen toward the younger deputies. At the top appeared an old military identification photograph. The younger Marcus. Clean-shaven. Hard eyes. Broad shoulders. Below the picture were lines of commendations. Chief Special Warfare Operator Marcus Elijah Coleman, United States Navy SEAL, Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, multiple classified operational commendations. One deputy quietly covered his mouth. Another stared in complete disbelief. My God. A paramedic whispered, He's that Marcus Coleman? Brooks nodded. The same one. Tyler's heartbeat quickened. He looked back at Marcus. Then at the screen. Then back again. Everything suddenly made sense. The calm. The patience. The effortless precision. The refusal to strike after every opening. This hadn't been luck. They hadn't cornered an overweight truck driver. They had threatened a man who had spent decades mastering violence, only to spend the rest of his life trying never to use it again. Tyler lowered his head. For the first time in years. Shame outweighed pride. Marcus noticed. He slowly walked toward him. Several deputies instinctively shifted forward. Brooks raised one hand. It's okay. Marcus stopped only a few feet from Tyler. The younger man couldn't meet his eyes. His voice broke. I thought you were weak. Marcus looked at the muddy pavement. So did a lot of people. Why didn't you tell us? Marcus smiled gently. Would it have changed the kind of people you chose to be? Tyler opened his mouth. No words came. Marcus continued quietly. If the only reason someone respects another person is because they're dangerous, that's not respect. That's fear. The sentence settled over everyone present. Heavy. Unavoidable. Marcus reached into his truck. He picked up the old Navy cap. Its brim was bent. Mud stained the faded fabric. The embroidered trident was scratched. He brushed it clean with slow, careful movements. Almost tenderly. Then he placed it back on his head. It still fits, Brooks said with a smile. Marcus chuckled softly. Barely. The deputies laughed. Even a few paramedics smiled through the tension. For the first time since the confrontation began, the darkness surrounding the truck stop seemed to lift. Yet Tyler remained silent. Watching. Thinking. Realizing that the strongest man he had ever met hadn't won because he knew how to fight. He had won because he had exhausted every possible reason not to. If this story reminds you that true heroes rarely announce themselves, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Because sometimes, the greatest strength is hidden beneath the most ordinary uniform. And sometimes, the quietest man in the parking lot carries the loudest legacy. The handcuffs clicked shut with a cold metallic snap. One after another, the members of the Iron Wolves were escorted toward waiting patrol cars, their soaked leather jackets hanging heavily from their shoulders. No one argued anymore. No one shouted. The arrogance that had filled the truck stop less than 30 minutes earlier had disappeared beneath the steady Louisiana rain. Tyler Briggs stood apart from the others. His wrists were cuffed in front of him because of the injury to his shoulder. The paramedics had wrapped it in a temporary sling, but he hardly noticed the pain. His eyes never left Marcus Coleman. The quiet truck driver had returned to the side of his Freightliner. Without saying a word, Marcus climbed onto the metal step, opened the driver's door, and reached into the sleeper compartment. When he stepped back down, he wasn't carrying a weapon. He held a faded blue towel, a small first aid kit, and a thermos. Emily watched in confusion. So, what is he doing? No one answered. Marcus walked straight toward the youngest biker. Luke sat on the edge of an ambulance bumper, blood running from a cut above his eyebrow, while an exhausted EMT prepared fresh bandages. The young medic looked up. I've got him. Marcus smiled politely. I know. He handed over the clean towel. This one's softer. The medic accepted it with a grateful nod. Thank you. Marcus turned toward Luke. You feeling dizzy? Luke shook his head. No, sir. Nausea. No. Marcus examined the swelling around the young man's temple. You'll have a headache tomorrow. Luke gave a weak laugh. I probably deserve worse. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. No. You deserve the chance to make tomorrow different. Luke lowered his eyes. Those words hurt more than any punch ever could. I joined them because... His voice trembled. I didn't have anywhere else. Marcus nodded slowly. I figured. You did. I've met lonely men before. Luke swallowed hard. My dad threw me out when I was 17. My mom died when I was 12. I thought. He looked toward the handcuffed gang members. I thought they were family. Marcus followed his gaze. No. They were people who needed healing. There's a difference. Luke's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in years, someone had looked beyond his mistakes. Deputy Brooks quietly observed the conversation from several yards away. One of the younger deputies walked beside him. I don't understand him. Brooks smiled faintly. That's because you're watching a warrior. The deputy frowned. He just beat 6 men. And now he's checking if they're okay. Brooks nodded. Exactly. That's what real warriors do. Across the parking lot, Tyler finally spoke. His voice was barely audible. Marcus. The former SEAL turned. Tyler struggled to keep his composure. I owe you. He stopped. The words refused to come. Marcus waited patiently. Finally. I'm sorry. Rain continued falling around them. Nobody interrupted. Nobody laughed. Tyler's eyes remained fixed on the soaked pavement. I've spent my whole life proving I wasn't afraid of anyone. I thought making people fear me meant I was strong. His shoulders trembled. But tonight, he looked up. You could have broken every bone in my body. You didn't. Marcus answered quietly. I've broken enough things in my lifetime. Tyler frowned. What do you mean? Marcus looked toward the distant highway. When I was young, I believed winning meant defeating the enemy. He paused. Then I went to war. Silence settled again. When the fighting ended, Marcus continued softly. I realized every battle leaves something broken. Sometimes it's a body. Sometimes it's a family. Sometimes. He placed one weathered hand over his chest. It's the man who walks away. Tyler stared at him. You still carry that? Marcus smiled sadly. Every day. Another long silence passed. Finally, Tyler whispered, so why didn't you hate me? Marcus looked directly into his eyes. Because hate spreads. If I hand it back to you, it keeps traveling. The rain suddenly felt lighter. Almost gentle. Emily quietly wiped tears from her cheeks. Even the paramedics had stopped pretending not to listen. Marcus stepped closer to Tyler. So listen carefully. This night doesn't have to become the rest of your life. You'll answer for what you did. You should. But prison doesn't decide who you become. You do. Tyler's breathing became uneven. No one had ever spoken to him like this. Not his father. Not his teachers. Not even the men who claimed to be his brothers. Marcus extended his hand. Not to shake. To help Tyler adjust the slipping sling around his injured shoulder. The simple gesture stunned everyone. Especially Tyler. You'd still help me? Marcus shrugged gently. You're hurt. It's what decent people do. Tyler closed his eyes. One tear escaped despite every effort to stop it. He nodded once. Not to Marcus. To himself. As though making a promise no one else could hear. If this moment touched your heart, remember that forgiveness is never about pretending the wrong never happened. It's about refusing to let the wrong become the final chapter. Marcus returned to his truck without another word. Behind him, under the flashing patrol lights, Tyler watched the man he had mocked only an hour earlier. Not with fear. Not anymore. But with a respect that could never have been forced. Only earned. Dawn arrived quietly. The rain had passed some time before sunrise, leaving the truck stop washed clean beneath a sky slowly turning shades of pale blue and soft gold. The flashing police lights were gone. The ambulances had disappeared into the distance. Only damp pavement remained, reflecting the first rays of morning like polished glass. The iron wolves had been taken away. Their motorcycles waited on flatbed tow trucks, chained down in silence. The parking lot that had echoed with insults and threats only an hour earlier now carried nothing louder than birds waking in the nearby pine trees. Marcus Coleman stood beside his Freightliner. A mechanic hired by the trucking company had already inspected the trailer. The refrigeration unit had never stopped running. Every box of insulin, every bag of plasma, every carton of life-saving medication remained perfectly preserved. Marcus rested one broad hand against the side of the trailer. For the first time since the confrontation began, he allowed himself a slow breath. They'll get there. Emily stepped out of the convenience store carrying 2 fresh cups of coffee. Unlike the night before, her hands no longer trembled. She walked toward Marcus with a shy smile. I made another one. Marcus chuckled softly. I was hoping you would. She handed him the larger cup. This one's free. Marcus reached into his pocket for his wallet. Emily immediately shook her head. No, you already paid for the last one. Marcus smiled. I spilled that one. She laughed through slightly red eyes. No. She looked directly at him. You lost it because you were protecting everyone here. Marcus paused. Then quietly placed the wallet back into his pocket. Thank you. Emily hesitated before speaking again. My mom. Marcus looked up. She starts another round of chemotherapy next week. I've been scared. Marcus nodded with understanding. I know. I almost quit this job. She looked around the now peaceful parking lot. But after last night, I think she'd tell me to keep going. Marcus smiled warmly. Your mother raised someone brave. Emily lowered her eyes, trying to hide another tear. No, she whispered. I just met someone who reminded me what brave really looks like. Marcus looked away toward the rising sun. Bravery isn't about fighting. It's about doing the right thing after you're scared. Emily quietly repeated the words to herself, as though committing them to memory forever. A few minutes later, Deputy Daniel Brooks walked across the parking lot carrying a neatly folded evidence bag. Inside rested Marcus's old Navy cap. The mud had been carefully cleaned away. The torn stitching had even been temporarily repaired with clear thread. Brooks handed it over with both hands. I thought you'd want this back. Marcus accepted it gently. He ran his fingers across the faded trident. Years of wear covered every inch of the fabric. Some memories faded. Others never could. Brooks smiled. You know, the young deputies couldn't stop talking about you. Marcus sighed playfully. I was hoping they'd forget. Brooks laughed. Not a chance. They asked why a man with your record drives a truck instead of running a security company. Marcus looked toward the endless interstate stretching beyond the truck stop. You know what I told them? Brooks shook his head. Marcus smiled. I said children don't care who delivers their medicine. They just need it to arrive. Brooks looked at him for several long seconds before quietly nodding. That's exactly why you were always the best of us. Marcus didn't answer. Compliments had always made him uncomfortable. He simply placed the old cap back onto his head. The brim was still bent. The stitching still faded. It fit perfectly. His radio crackled inside the cab. Marcus, this is dispatch. You copy? Marcus climbed into the driver's seat and picked up the microphone. Go ahead. We heard about what happened. A brief pause followed. You okay? Marcus looked through the windshield. The road ahead stretched toward the horizon, endless and familiar. I'm fine. The hospital called. They wanted us to thank you for getting the shipment there on time. Marcus smiled quietly. Tell them. He glanced toward the refrigerated trailer one last time. I was only doing my job. He set the microphone down. The diesel engine rumbled to life. Beneath him. Deep. Steady. Comforting. As the Freightliner rolled slowly toward the highway exit, Emily, Deputy Brooks, the mechanic, and even several exhausted paramedics who had remained behind stood watching. No one waved dramatically. No speeches were made. Some moments were too meaningful for words. Miles down the interstate, Marcus reached toward the passenger seat. The small wooden picture frame rested exactly where it always had. Angela smiled back at him from another summer, another lifetime. Beside her photo lay Ava's newest drawing. A giant blue truck. A little girl waving from the window. Across the top, written in uneven crayon letters, were the words, Grandpa brings hope. Marcus smiled. His eyes grew moist. Not hope, he whispered. Just another delivery. Outside, the morning sun climbed higher, bathing the highway in warm golden light. The truck became smaller and smaller until it disappeared beyond the distant curve of the road. No television cameras followed him. No reporters waited. No medals were handed out. Only thousands of strangers, scattered across hospitals, neighborhoods, and homes, would wake that morning without ever knowing the quiet man who had helped make another ordinary day possible. Because the strongest people rarely ask the world to notice them. They simply keep moving forward. 1 mile. One choice. One act of kindness at a time. And somewhere behind him, in a county jail cell still echoing with the memory of that rainy night, Tyler Briggs sat alone. For the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about revenge. He wasn't thinking about reputation. He wasn't thinking about fear. He was thinking about one simple sentence spoken by the man he had tried to humiliate. If the only reason someone respects another person is because they're dangerous, that's not respect. That's fear. Tyler closed his eyes. Those words would stay with him long after the bruises healed. Perhaps that was Marcus Coleman's greatest victory. Not that he defeated a gang, but that he refused to let violence have the final word. The highway stretched endlessly beneath the morning sky. And somewhere beyond the horizon, an ordinary truck driver continued his journey, carrying medicine in his trailer, mercy in his heart, and the quiet strength to change lives without ever asking for recognition.